Now, Inside Number 9, a television show that essentially revived the idea of the anthology series when it first aired 10 years ago now, and revived it so inventively and effectively that it's about to begin its 9th series, its final series apparently. Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton's accumulating collection of gothic stories, always at some level comic, were almost all marked by an ingenuity of plotting or narrative form that had fans wondering how they kept it up. And fan expectations, particularly when it comes to final episodes, is something they understand well. In a story from an earlier series, Spencer, the writer of a Game of Thrones-style fantasy called The Ninth Circle, found himself taken to task by the host of a fan podcast.
So, Spence, I have been digging through some of the old message boards from the series finale last year. Pale Horse 92 said they ruined my show. The writing was terrible from season 4 onwards. That's from Bruiser Fan. I normally like Maguire's scripts, but this really was a piece of shit. What do you think he means by that?
I think he means a piece of shit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would make more sense. How does it feel, Spencer, when you hear comments like that? Because presumably you didn't set out to write a terrible ending.
No, I certainly didn't. We planned for a long time for the denouement and aimed for something that would be true to the show's ethos, but would also be surprising.
But you do accept now that you failed to do that?
Not necessarily. I always trust my own instincts, because without those, as a writer, where would I be?
Well, maybe higher than a 31% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton in Simon Says from season 6 of Inside Number 9 about the extreme lengths some fans will go to make sure a favourite show does not disappoint. And joining me now on Zoom to talk about making sure Inside Number 9 ends on an appropriate high is Reece Shearsmith. Reece, I hope there's been no unseemly coercion in preparing for series number 9. Is it really the end, actually, or is it a temporary pause?
Is it the end? Yes, I think it is. It's a poetic decision that we made so that we would be in charge of ending this odd program that, we never had any idea would last longer than a series of 6 stories. So to still be doing it 12 years later in our lives is quite extraordinary. So when we started to creep toward the number 9, we thought, well, if we can get there, that's where we must stop, because it seems the right place to do it. So that's really the only decision. Yes, and we managed to do it.
Yeah, no, I mentioned Series 7. You begin to think, well, we've got to take it to Series 9, but not beyond.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and not beyond. We thought not.
You will have written 55 episodes in total, I think, by the end of this series. I think I've got the number right. And you've written episodes as pastiche commedia dell'arte. You've written episodes in iambic pentameter. You've written episodes that tell the story in reverse chronology. There's an episode in the new series entirely filmed by a fixed doorbell security camera. How hard has it been to keep coming up with new ways of telling stories?
It's absolute tyranny.
But do you have a long list of ideas before you go into a new series that you whittle down, or are you always in a sort of slight panic thinking, we need another?
Well, there's always the element of you need another, because, of course, once you've concluded a story in an anthology, everything resets and you begin again the next week with another world and another story that hopefully will hook the viewer in. So that's been the challenge, and it's been a great course for us as writers, because we've managed to explore so many different ways of telling a story with the medium of television over these 10 years. It's been a real treat for us, because it certainly hasn't felt like the last 10 years we've been doing the same thing. We've burned a lifetime of ideas, because every week is a very silly one, and there's a more Pinteresque one, and then there's a high farce. And so we've had lots of shots at telling different types of story. But that was great in the first series, but then it became a little bit more, well, we have this opportunity. What can we do with this treat every week where you don't know what you're going to get, and how can we tell this story in a way that is surprising? Because a lot of what we enjoy about the TV that we watched when we were children and now sort of emulating is the surprise and the treat of not quite knowing where the story is going. It's so hard these days to do anything that's a surprise. So to keep a lid on things and go in blind is our favourite way to enjoy these shows.
And does it give you a freedom, sort of artistic? I mean, I'm curious, in the new series, the first episode deals with that experience, which a lot of people sort of living in a city will have had, the strange social embarrassment of somebody coming down the train begging and all of the feelings that come from that. That's a subject you wouldn't see on television now, except here. There isn't a play for today which will do it. I can't see how you would get it in any other way, but you can get that sort of thing into Inside Number 9.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a great, absolutely. And you cite Play for Today, and that really was one of the jumping off points of when we pitched the idea of doing this. Of course, there's been a huge, great tradition of many anthology series when it was popular, and there was Tales of the Unexpected and The Twilight Zone and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And of course, before then, we had our own sort of version of that with these plays, which were the Play for Today. So we just thought, are we allowed to do these one-off stories that just grab you? It's about the writing, and it's about the hit the ground running with telling these stories. And yes, we do, I think, smuggle in some very big issues.
It's interesting. You talk about that business of being constrained, and claustrophobia has always been part of it. The very first episode crammed all of the actors inside a wardrobe. Now, was that originally a sort of production economy decision, or did you know from the very beginning that you wanted to do what television executives call bottle episodes, contained? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it was a sort of decision that we saddled ourselves with. That's what it feels like now, because the claustrophobia is sort of everything. And the storytelling where you don't leave the room or the building is much harder, because you can't, oftentimes exposition, you can go away and you can come back, or you go outside at least, and then time can have passed and new information can be gleaned. But it was a constraint. And it was born from the series we did before. Steve and I did a series called Psychoville, and one of the episodes was as you say, a bottle episode that was all shot in one take. It was a sort of a pastiche of Hitchcock's Rope, because he did a film where he filmed in one long take. It was actually like 15-minute chunks, but we did it in a half hour with a gap of there was a 10-minute. The last 10 minutes we'd cut in a secret position, but. And that thrilled us. We thought, this is a great way can we do 6 of these? And that was why we thought that we took that to the BBC as this idea. It was very out of favour, as you say. But the anthology, I think, is creeping back into people's enjoyment, I think, because they're just short bursts. You're not committed to 10 years of one series.
Well, also it puts you on the alert. I mean, a lot of the viewer responses and critical responses to a certain extent concentrate on the ending, because your endings are very often terrific, and they spring a surprise. But the openings are very important, aren't they? I mean, just that Simon Says opens like Hitchcock's Rear Window. The camera pans around the room, and in that one pan, you learn everything you need to know about what that character is.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the job that we've been struggling with for the last 10 years is the storytelling and the invention of how to tell a story, and in a very in 28 and a half minutes, which is not long, and it's it's the difficult part of writing a series, where the episode 1 is the hard one, because you're setting everything up. So and I've grown slightly exhausted with the notion that the last 30 seconds is everything, of course, because it's the journey to get there. That's the thing. That's where the nuts and bolts of it are. And that's what Steve and I sit in a room agonizing over, how to seamlessly appear that this story is just tumbling out, and it's you're understanding every beat for beat, and you're ahead of it or not. And that's not easy to do, but it shouldn't look like it's been difficult to convey that story.
One of the interesting things is you trust viewers to notice things. And I wonder whether you'd ever had television executives coming to you and saying, look, you're going to have to make this more obvious. Have you grown in confidence in the audience's ability?
Yes, we do. We're fully aware that today's audiences are very sophisticated, certainly our audiences, because now it's an adversarial position that we're in with an audience now, because they're onto us, and they're looking for, none of this is as it seems. What are they doing really? And so we've got to be very careful now and clever with how we hide what we're really pulling. We have had a few instances where people have thought that the script has come back and they've said it's too difficult. Can you put a line in? And we've always regretted it. We've always thought it's slightly made it less clever and less intelligent and we know people would understand it, and we like the fact that you have to sit down and lean into this program. You can't watch it and wander out and get a bag of crisps, come back in and think what's happened.
No.
It requires your attention.
And part of the pleasure, of course, is being misled. I mean, you did an episode called Misdirection, which was about the magician's tricks, and they very often are your tricks, aren't they? You send us in one direction while something is happening in another corner, which we know is happening, but we just don't think it's important at that moment.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, a lot of the sort of the moments that matter in Inside Number 9 are hidden in plain sight, and that's the best kind of twist, if you need to call them that, because then everything tumbles out at the end when you have this epiphany of what you think you've been watching. What I think it was Aristotle said, all good drama should be, oh no, oh of course, or something like that. It's like, oh no, of course, isn't it? And then the realization of like, yes, of course it is, and I should have seen it. And it's always very satisfying if you manage to pull the wool over people's eyes. You
have actually once managed to pull the wool over Darren Brown's eyes, haven't you? When you did the Halloween, the live one, you fooled him. Well, he should not have been foolable.
Absolutely not. It was the kind of trick that he would pull himself. And I remember we'd set this idea that we would do this live episode, and it was live, and then it was going to go wrong in a spooky way, and that was our conceit. And Darren was watching, and he thought it had gone wrong, and he was sending me texts with commiseration, but it was all part of our master plan. So
I have to
that
say,
was very satisfying.
I mean, you fooled me recently with 3x3. I don't want to say anything about it, but I came in, I was watching live. It was that odd experience of what I switched on. I kind of thought, oh, Inside Number 9's on, watched it, came in slightly late, and I sat there thinking, what is going on here? And what you'd done is you'd harnessed my contempt and then turned it on me. But I had the most terrific time thinking, I am so stupid not to have seen this.
That's great. Then our work is done.
Yeah. The show goes very deep at times. It went enormously deep in 12 Days of Christine, and pathos is always a part of it, isn't it? A real human feeling.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's what perhaps surprises people when they do feel so moved by some of the more emotional episodes, because I think people didn't expect that of us. So in a half-hour comedy that purports to come from the BBC comedy department, there are some very emotional stories that really moved a lot of people. And I think, and we're very proud of those episodes, because that's not normally what you get. But
it's interesting on the fan sites, like we heard from that comedy you did, everybody rates them, and they all come up with their top tens, and they're all different, which is interesting. Do you have Do you have a favourite?
One of my favourites, I always cite it, is the magic one, the Misdirection, because I've got a big passion for magic, but also the episode that we did that was a period episode set in the 17th century about these witch finders that come to the town. And it was a sort of Python-esque, it was heightened, it was very great language. We had David Warner, who was brilliant.
Very funny. Give us the title of it, and then we can send people back to it.
That one is called The Trial of Elizabeth Gadge.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much, Reece Shearsmith. Series 9 of Inside Number 9 begins on BBC Two and iPlayer on Wednesday, May the 8th at 10 p.m. And you'll also find all 8 previous series of Inside Number 9, 49 episodes in total, on iPlayer right now.